The best chats are always the unscripted ones. There are interesting stories all around us, and here's one of them.
Open your eyes, spectacular's right in front of you.
Oh yeah, this is totally unscripted, so we never know where this is going to go.
Dangerous.
This is the unscripted perspective. And here's your host, Phil Parker. Phil Parker. Phil Parker. Phil Parker.
Well, hello. It is another unscripted perspective with me, your host, Phil Parker. And today I have another amazing guest. His name is Jerry Carita. He is so many things. I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a second. I'm glad to be back. We were off air kind of getting some guests together and stuff. So, Jerry, you're debuting our 2024. So, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
A lot of pressure. I feel that's under the gun now. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why not? Why not? So, Jerry, as I always do with the unscripted perspective, just in case there's people out there who don't know who you are, tell me a little bit about you and your background, and let's introduce yourself.
Sure thing. So I am by day, I'm a television producer, mostly unscripted stuff. So reality shows. Things like The Food That Built America, Counting Cars, going all the way back. I used to work on Wife Swap and things like that. And by night, and let's be honest, by day also, I'm a comic book creator. So
awesome.
That's what we're talking about today.
And that's kind of what we're here for today.
Yeah.
I wore my Avengers t-shirt and everything just because I'm a huge Marvel fan, but my comic, there you go. Yeah.
I keep my Iron Man sketch cover handy.
I love it. I love it. And if I'm being honest, he's a close second to Spider-Man for me, just because of my last name. I kind of go with the Spidey. But
FP, is sort of the same kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Growing up, it was kind of. Growing up, it was kind of like my nickname, you know what I mean? Everyone used to call me Spidey. So tell me a little bit about how you kind of got into the world of comics. Obviously you're a television producer. We can talk a little bit about that as well, but what was the segue for you? Because growing up for me, comics were just everything for me. Like I would be reading books and then all of a sudden comics came in and it was game over, and I was just reading comics the whole time.
I got pretty old before I got into comics, and it was two things that happened at the same time. So one is when I was a kid, my geek thing was television. So that's why I got into producing TV to begin with.
Right.
And, it was watching things like Star Trek and Star Trek Next Generation and the X-Files with my mother. That's kind of where my geek thing came from. And I stuck with that all the way through, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then, all the way up to, like I'm in the middle of watching Monarch and a bunch of Godzilla content now. So,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I just did Blue Eye Samurai. So it all was, TV for me up until I was in my 30s. I worked on Comic Book Men. So I produced the first season of that show. Kevin Smith and his hometown comic book shop that he owned, Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash in New Jersey. And it was sort of about him and his group of friends who worked there and ran the shop, and just hanging out in the comic book shop. This was like 11 years ago now, 12 years ago. I just kind of fell in love with the books as I was hanging out in there. So around the same time, I have a cousin who's a comic writer. My cousin is James Tynan. And so he had just started his career working at DC, and he was writing, I think at the time he was doing backstories for Batman about Alfred and sort of Alfred's backstory. So those two things were happening at the same time. And I started reading everything he was doing. And I started, my first comic that I really read was The Walking Dead. So that was,
there you go.
Yeah. It's so late, and it's such you can kind of draw a direct line from that to where I'm at now, which is I generally don't gravitate towards Spider-Man and superhero comics. I love all the movies. I've gone back and done all my homework. As soon as I got into comics, sure. I went back and I started reading Batman from the beginning, and I read all the Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men, and I went back and I did some real homework and some real real homework on it all. And I love all those stories. But the thing that like always speaks to me is the indie stuff, and it's because I think I started with, random super violent black and white, The Walking Dead.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Brooke, who just commented, is a huge Kevin Smith. Thank you, Brooke, for watching.
He's, by the way, he's fantastic. If you ever have a chance to meet him, like,
I'd love to meet him. He's amazing.
He does when he does signings and he does stuff like that. He's that guy who stays around till 4 a.m. to shake.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
he's really great.
I've heard he's a cool dude to hang out with as well, which is really, really cool. The big thing for me that I want to ask you is The Walking Dead. Like you're producing for AMC, right? So
and that's why that book. So we weren't allowed to have most comics on the walls because of clearance issues. But because we were doing a show for AMC, we got a special clearance to use The Walking Dead. So all the shelves in the store were just jammed full with The Walking Dead books.
Well, me and Brooke are massive Walking Dead fans. We were going to start a kind of a rewatch podcast, but it kind of it was going to just be us just going ooh and ah. So we didn't pan out. But it was it's just an amazing amazing series and everything. But the cool part about comics is that, like you said, there's a story for everybody. Like there's a creator out there for you, and I love finding these like indie kind of comic stores in the middle of nowhere. In Oregon, there's one in Cannon Beach and stuff like that, where you walk in and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like all these little comic book houses that are just building up. Like Dark Horse was pretty small until it just blew up, and then Netflix picked up a show and then it's just huge again. But, for me, I think it's really important for society to like realize that comic books are kind of where a lot of our movies come from, a lot of our TV shows come from, and supporting that like art form is a big deal, so
I agree. And I think the comics are in like a weird place right now where there's like they're evolving, like a lot of publishers are doing like one issue and then going right to the trade paperback and things like where the actual a floppy coming out every Wednesday like might not always be a thing. I think the stories will always be there, and I think that kind of storytelling has been there since people could scratch stick figures on cave walls. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Right.
But, the actual way it's delivered to other human beings, I think that's going to, you see this, by the way? I think that's going to keep changing. That's my assistant right there.
There you go. That's awesome.
So it's great. It's great when you can find a comic shop that actually has a bunch of like really independent, like indie comics, that kind of take risks.
Yeah. You don't see them a lot anymore, but they're out there. There's a great little comic book store in Pike Place up in Seattle. I love going in there just because they have everything. It's like they have every mainstream comic and they have every kind of indie comic, and it's just really, really cool to see that. What are your biggest influences? Because you talk about like being a producer and doing all the reality TV stuff, but for you as a comic book writer, where do you draw most of your influences from?
I would say the biggest one for me has been Scott Snyder, and that's partially I'm in his through his Substack. He does a class, and so I'm in the writing class, and so he's actually a couple of projects I've worked on. He has like read the scripts and kind of given me notes on things, and just listening to him kind of. When I was in college, I took a lot of screenwriting classes and telewriting and teleplay writing classes, and hearing him talk about sort of crafting stories for comics. There are some of the mechanics are different. Like if you're writing a TV script, you have act breaks. You need to build up to an act break and make people stick around for the commercial. If you're or episodes where you need someone to stick around and watch the next episode. If you're writing something for Netflix now, they have to like skip credits and go to the next episode.
Yeah, right.
So people write to that. They write like a cliffhanger. They write that thing. In comics, it's a page turn. Or it's issues need to end with some kind of a twist as well, or something to keep people coming back for the next issue. but you're writing for a page turn. You're keeping track of, are you on an even numbered page or an odd numbered page? Like the mechanics are different. But hearing him talk about storytelling, it dawned on me that the storytelling rules are kind of all the same. And so, I kind of was, when I first thought to myself, I might want to write a comic and publish one myself, I turned to this class first as sort of like a guide. And I realized that from working in television, from writing for TV for all these years, and just from like my love of now comics, but going back to love of episodic storytelling through television, I already had a lot of the kind of rhythms and tools there. But, the way that he kind of over the last few years has like put his toe into a bunch of different genres, once he left the superhero stuff for a little bit, I found that kind of like exciting and inspiring. So, the things I've been creating are in all different genres. And I would say I've learned a lot, though, from him, just like the mechanics of writing and the mechanics of building a story that keeps building until you want it to release,
Tell me about your first comic and how what the struggle, I guess, was, or maybe not. What your journey was creating that first comic book, because there's so many people out there. As a kid, I used to, like make comic books myself for jokes, and there was all these weird little superhero. It was always a superhero, but it was always like something funny with cartoons and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's always a dream for someone to be able to do what you've done. Now, granted, you've got this new release and it's on Kickstarter and everything, but you've made comics. Like there's stuff out there forever. Like it's out in the world. It's a forever piece of literature, whatever you want to call it. It's an amazing piece. What was that journey like for you initially?
I would say, I think that for a lot of people who are creative, this is kind of a similar thing. It's just getting started and then getting finished. Like sitting down and actually beginning the project is kind of a mental barrier that I think a lot of people have. Just like having the idea of like, oh, I have a great idea for a story. Like a lot of people have what they think is a great idea or is a great idea, that they just actually sitting down and going, I'm going to write it. That is like a quantum leap of confidence that you're going to start writing something that you think someone else will pay you to read. That alone is like, some people never get past that hurdle. And so there's probably a lot of great stories we're never going to read or hear because of that. And then getting to the end of it, like fear of, success and putting it out there and rejection, all those things. I think those are the hardest things to kind of get over at creating anything, your own TV idea, your own writing a novel, writing this, painting, like anything that you're going to put out there that you created, that came out of your mind.
Right.
That to me is the biggest hurdle. But actually writing the comic, I think it was just, I felt like I had a lot of ideas, and I took something Scott said in this class and I kind of like ran with that. And it was that a lot of the things he writes are based in, a fear that he has about something. And, a lot of times it's about family, about like where his kids are in life. And so my first comic that I wrote was Cicada Samurai. And it was about the little cicada bugs that come out every 17 years, make an unholy racket. And all they do is, mate and die. Like that's how much time they have above ground before their life cycle is over. And so right around the time, about 2 years ago, there was a big brood emerged. It was in the news. I think there's a big one coming out this spring too. And my kids are getting older. So, I have these kids who are like they're close to teen years now. They're spending more and more time out of the house. And so I was just terrified about that. Like that was a big anxiety inducing thing. Your kids like not around all the time. And so I just put those two things together, and I thought like, okay, I have 3 kids, keeping them alive is a full-time job, and I'm one of 2 adults. So there are 2 of us doing that job. What if there was only 1 adult and there were 1 billion kids? And for all those billion kids, they're all going to prom night on the same night. They're all turning 17. They're all going out. They're going to make bad decisions. And my job is to keep them alive. And that's kind of where Cicada Samurai came from. It's all about a parent. It's one immortal, one adult with one adult cicada who has some life experience, has been around for 100 years. And everyone else is 17 years old. And they're just going to go out and party and make bad decisions. And he has to try and keep them alive with his, magical samurai fighting powers, because comic books, you can do that.
Right.
But that's kind of where it came from. And I think that's like, that's a challenge, I think, is kind of taking something that is real for you in the real world and then taking that and putting it in the story, not always in a literal way, but finding like a parallel, so that ideally someone reads that story. If you're a parent, you're going to recognize a lot of the way he talks about the younger cicadas, as like, if you have teenagers especially, you're going to recognize that kind of like, oh, these kids kind of attitude.
Right.
And that's kind of, I think that's hard, like imbuing those real life things into any story is a challenge.
Right. Yeah. And obviously you want people to read it, and it's comic books are, depending on what you're writing, they can be dark, they can be whatever you want them to be, but you kind of have to keep to that narrative, I suppose, if you commit to that kind of storyline. Much like, I've read so many comics over the years. It's just it's incredible. And then video games also coming into that, making a comic book based on a video game, and you're just like, oh, that's kind of unoriginal. So there's so many little things that are coming out into the comic book world. The latest movie that came out for me that I didn't even realize was a comic was Bloodshot with Vin Diesel.
Oh yeah,
and it was an independent, another one of those independents, and it's just like, wow. And it was such a cool idea, and I was like, how the hell have I not read this before?
That's one thing.
I'm a big superhero geek.
That's one thing I really like about the comics thing, and about things like Kickstarter, where if you have like, if you set your goals at a reasonable like number, you can, if you get 50 or 100 people who are interested in your thing, you can make it, and that can be anything. Like if you can't do that with like a studio movie. I think that's part of why they're all based on IPs that exist already. So video games based on comic books, movies based on comic books based on movies, comic books that are, the Marvel universe trying to mirror the movie universe because they think that might be more popular, maybe help sales. And like, it's all just like feeding off of itself. And like, what's nice about funding your own comic book, and you can just take a few things you love, mash them together into something new. And if you can find 50 people who want to give you like $10 for it, you can make it happen. You can kind of do it. And it's kind of like creatively exciting and liberating. You can kind of do whatever you want.
Jordan, thanks for tuning in, my friend. He's saying hello. He's coming in from your page. So
Jordan's been following me tonight. I was on another show earlier tonight. Jordan's awesome. He was like one of my super backers for Reign of Dracula.
Oh wow, cool.
Book I published that I didn't create, but
very cool. Well, welcome, Jordan. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your tuning in tonight. The biggest thing for me about comic books is just how they are for anybody. Like, they're not just, it's not how sometimes there's a book and it's for a specific type of people or whatever. There's a comic book literally for every age. I'm so excited because my son is 5. I'm just waiting for those. Like, I already got him like a Mickey Mouse comic book, but it's like just getting him into the vibe of picking up a comic book and getting excited about reading it and stuff. It's just been, I'm looking forward to that kind of transition, but they're literally for anybody. And that's what's really, really cool about them. But for me, I think the biggest question for me is, where do you find your stories from? Like, are you like, you have older kids now? Are you kind of basing it off something that you've seen through their childhood, or are you, because of your experience in the TV world, do you find some inspiration from there?
I would say it's a lot of stuff from my life, but like, again, because I kind of like fantastical stories, like fantasies and stuff like that, things that take place in other worlds or weird places. You kind of find ways to kind of take things that are happening in your real life and apply them. So, like the Cicada Samurai story I told is really about like my own anxiety and then my obsession with a bunch of bugs that emerge every 17 years. So I mashed those two things together and I came up with a fun story. And then, the Grizzly Crew, which is the one that's live right now on Kickstarter, that was a story that came about because of my son, my 6-year-old, then 6-year-old, about 2 years ago, walked into my office and just started kind of telling me about pirate bears. And, yeah, it kind of happened. It was the day that It was the day that Midjourney came out in like a user-friendly form, and I think like a bunch of people, I logged into it and I was messing around with it and trying to figure out, is this the beginning of Judgment Day? Are we all dead? You know, is society coming to an end now because there's AI art? And you know, I was writing Cicada Samurai, so I had fed Midjourney a bunch of like Cicada and Samurai things just to mess around with it. That's what I had in my mind. He walked in and he was like, "What's this?" And I told him it's an artificial intelligence art generator. He's like, "What does that mean?" And so I explained it to him, and he started feeding me stuff. He was like, "What about a Spider-Man monkey?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, Spider-Man monkey." It pooped out like a weird little Spider-Man monkey thing. And then like the third or fourth thing he said was, "What about a pirate bear?" And it created this really weird, malformed, like scary looking, gigantic pirate bear thing. And he's scared of bears. So he just started staring at it. And I was like, okay, he's having a moment. I'm going to go back to work over here. And I started typing. And he suddenly just was like, his name's Captain Grizzly. He's the captain of a pirate ship filled with bears. This is like the first conversation we had about it.
Oh my gosh.
They sail around looking for treasure. When they find it, it looks like gold, but it's not gold. It's wax. When you squeeze it, it's filled with honey. And it's called the Grizzly Crew. And like in the middle of all that, I suddenly was like, stop talking. Let me start writing stuff down. And then we just started bouncing the idea back and forth. And I think because the bear is something he's afraid of bears just generally, that they exist. The idea scares him that there are bears.
Yeah, I'm with them. I'm
totally.
kind of with them there.
Totally.
I'm Irish, dude. I grew up in a country where the scariest thing is an angry bull. Like that's pretty much it. You know?
Yeah.
I have memories of running through fields, hopping fences away from bulls. That's literally it. I moved to America, and it's like my first camping trip, bear warning, snakes, like rattlesnake in the distance. I'm like, I'm out. I'm already gone home.
I believe it. But so kind of because it came, I think him making up the story was him processing his fear and kind of making it into something fun. Like the bears in the story are protecting people from scary pirates. You know, that all kind of came from what I think was him being afraid of bears and kind of telling that story. So I made it about that. So in the story, there's a village. It's being attacked by pirates on a nightly basis. These are all human beings. It's a human world. And the pirates are terrifying. The kids can't sleep at night. So mom and dad started telling their kids this story about the Grizzly Crew. And they're like, you can go to sleep. We've hired the Grizzly Crew. They're protecting us now. So it's these giant bears. The other pirates are afraid of the bears. It's all good. You can go to sleep now. And the kids don't buy it. So they have to kind of tell a whole story. And that's kind of where it all came from. So the whole thing will be about scary stuff that scares kids and how these pirate bears kind of protect, all these kids in the villages from all this really scary stuff.
It's such a cool concept, dude. It's like,
Thank you.
I'm honored to have you on about such a marketable idea. Like, I'm not even just bigging you up or anything. This is such a cool concept. It's a great idea. What it's based off, I mean, it sounds like it could be a TV show tomorrow. Like, it's just very, it's very well thought of, even though it was you and your, it's like, it's still a cool idea.
Thank you.
I'm gonna share the art just because I love it, dude. That is just the coolest image for me.
This is these are all the first. So Nick Justice is the character designer and the artist on the book. So he's kind of my creative partner in this story. And these are all just these are kind of his first drafts of these characters, and every one of them I was like, amazing, I love it.
Yeah. I love the idea. I love the concept. I love how it looks. It's incredible. So what is the hope, or what is the steps to, getting this out and producing more? Like how do you go from there?
So I toyed with kind of writing this one as a longer, like the whole graphic novel, like do the whole story in one big campaign and one big kind of fundraise and one big creative shot. But I wanted to see if there was kind of an audience out there that was looking for it first. So the plan is I have a 5-issue arc planned. It'll be the whole first story. We'll meet the villains in the story are, there's a pirate wolf named Captain Wolfheart. And he's super scary. Like by my son's direction, he needed to be actually terrifying.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so, that's, you can see him in that art you showed. He's the guy silhouetted in the back, that shadowy figure kind of looming over everybody in the background. Yeah, there he is.
I love it, dude.
Yeah, he's got like a scratch across his eye and like a glass.
Yeah. The details are amazing. I love it.
He's terrifying. And so, we'll meet him and they'll have to deal with him during the story. So, my goal is I'm going to do this issue. If it goes well, I've only got a few days left. I just hit my funding a couple of hours ago. So I just funded today. I've got 5 days left. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it's received. And, when I have another issue, I might try and do 2 issues for the next one. So I might get up to issue 3 for the next campaign, but I'm hoping to have the 5-issue arc written all this calendar year. And ideally, all like out in the world within, a year from now. I would say that's the hope.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just sharing some of the art here, and it really is inviting more than anything else. It's you talk about like how it's supposed to be scary and there's a little element of scare to it and everything, but it just makes me want to pick it up and read it. Like it's just very the artwork is amazing. So it's really well done.
Thank you.
Where do you like? I mean, when you come up with a book, a comic book, just for people who have no idea how this is even done, like there are some very gifted people out there that can do the artwork themselves, but they're few and far between. Like where do you start? Is it a streaming through Fiverr, trying to find a comic book artist that's ready to do stuff, or how do you start that?
I've been really lucky. I think with this one, I knew right away who I wanted to work with. Nick Justice is someone I've worked with before through Blue Juice Comics, which is where I got my start kind of learning about publishing and going to conventions and things like that. So Nick and I tabled together at New York Comic Con, and then we did a convention in Fairfax last year in Virginia. So, Nick and I have been buddies for a couple of years now. So I knew I wanted to work with him. I just love his style. And he did this actually. One of my a sketch cover, for Iron Man that he did for me for one of my kids. He did one Captain Marvel, he did another one Captain America for my other 2 kids. He's fantastic. And so I knew I wanted to work with him. I spoke to him about it and he was into it right away. So that was like easy for me. For Cicada Samurai, I got crazy lucky. I just reached out to people on Instagram. So what I've done, and if you're writing and you have something like you want to put out in the world and you need to find an artist, it is hard because really good ones they get very popular online very quickly. They get busy. Other people recognize that they're good and talented, and they just don't have time very quickly, or they get very expensive. And if you're kind of a lone creator trying to put together a book on a shoestring budget, it's hard to kind of, flip that bill.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So, I think what I did on Cicada Samurai was I got very lucky. I had this idea and I reached out to Takashi Okazaki, who, he's the creator of Afro Samurai, which is a huge manga from years ago, like a big indie book, became a big anime series. He does a lot of like video game designs, and I think he's right now doing Star Wars Visions books for Marvel.
Oh yeah, very cool.
So all the samurai, like Yoda as a samurai, like all that kind of imagery, that's all him. That's amazing. Wow. And he just was into it. I just was like, hey, I have this idea about a cicada that's a samurai, and I had no idea cicadas are huge in Japanese culture. It's a big part of their culture. So he was into it right away. He did some character designs for me. He was never going to be able to do the book, so I had to find someone else to do that. And I paired up with Mary Landro, who I found on Instagram. I just was following her. I love what she draws. She loves drawing monsters. I knew I was going to have a lot of big, crazy monsters. So I reached out to her, and she was into it. And so we got to work together. So I think that's how you do it. Like, what's nice about social media and Instagram, especially right now, is you can just find artists that way. You can, if you go searching through people who are doing something you like, and you can kind of reach out, talk through your project and see if you click. And if you want to invite that person into your creative world and make something with them.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to share this as well, just because we were just talking about the villain and just how great the artwork is. It's just so cool. I mean, I love it. It's the detail, the amount of effort into everything that's on there is just I'm a little bit taken aback. I mean, I know some comic book artists, and I know the effort and the talent that's involved, but this is just incredible stuff. And again, it's so marketable. It's ready for the world, like the whole idea. So really, let's get to the crux of all this. This is on Kickstarter. Like, how do people help you put this out in the world? What's the easiest way to do that?
So it's on Kickstarter. Anyone, if you can find it on you look up the word Grizzly on Kickstarter, it pops up. If you go to thornycomics.com, that will always redirect to whatever I'm working on. So right now it redirects to the Kickstarter campaign. And once you're there, I kept a lot of the rewards and everything very reasonably priced. So I think for $6 you can get the digital copy of the book. For just $10, which is pretty low on Kickstarter, you can get any one of the 3 covers. One's the main cover by Nick Justice, who's the series artist and character designer. That one you were showing before is a cover by Pablo Verdugo, which is great. Both of those are colored by Nate Lawson, who's this like fantastic colorist that just brings life to all these characters. And then the last cover is black and white. It's by Len Danovich, which I really love. It focuses, instead of on the koala, who's one of the 2 main characters, it focuses on the other main character, who's Rosie, both of whom are based on my son, my daughter. And Rosie is a 10-year-old bear who's like, can't wait to get off this crazy ship of pirates. She wants to go to like design school and engineering and stuff like that. She's smarter than everybody else, like my daughter. But for $10 you can pick up any cover. For $15 you can get it without, with just the art on the cover, so virgin variants. And then what I tried to do is I want to keep Nick as busy as possible. So almost all of my add-ons are commissions that you can get from Nick. So if you back the campaign at any physical level, you can pick any character across cartoons or comic books. We're keeping it PG because it's an all ages book. But Nick will do 5x8 or 11x17, black and white or full color, depending on what you want and what you want to pay for as an add-on. So almost all my add-ons are just keeping him busy for the next few weeks.
Awesome. And thornycomics.com is the website, right?
Yeah, that's the website. That'll redirect to whatever Kickstarter I'm working on.
Awesome. Well, I spelled it right, so it's ticking along the bottom there. So if anyone wants to, while they're listening in or watching, you can open a browser and head over there and take a look. Definitely recommend supporting the comic. It's such a great idea. So really, Jerry, like, what is the big vision for this? Obviously, you're going to do the ARC series, but where do you see this going? Is there a dream goal for you, or do you just kind of roll with the punches when you're creating comics?
I'm trying. I mean, I'm still very new at this, so I'm trying to just roll with the punches and not kind of get in my head that this is going to become something else. I will say that as I'm writing this one, as we're working on it, it is the one of all the things I've like had ideas about. It is the one that feels like it could very easily be what would have been a Saturday morning cartoon when I was a kid.
Yeah, 100%.
It kind of looks like an animated series to me. A lot of the artwork does too. It just kind of screams that to me, which is on purpose. I think a lot of the creative touchstones that I talked through with Nick before he designed the characters were things that I grew up watching, like Gummy Bears and Tailspin and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers and stuff like that. So a lot of the way he took the animals and turned them into anthropomorphic pirates and stuff, it comes from that kind of look. So it's very kind of like old school Saturday morning cartoon look to it,
which is great. I love that. That's one of the most inviting features of the artwork and everything is that it looks that way, because the first thing I think is nostalgia. Just for parents who are looking for a comic for their kid, they're gonna straight away be picking that up because it reminds them of stuff that they read when they were kids, and then for the kids, it's just inviting. It's just got everything about it that looks like what could be on Disney right now.
Right. And that's definitely on purpose. I think that when I started working in comics with my buddies at Blue Juice, we went to a bunch of conventions and I noticed right away that there's that expression, you can't judge a book by its cover, but for certain, nobody's going to pick up your book and look at it if they don't like the cover. Like
Yeah, agreed.
that's kind of, so I wanted something that was eye catching, and I think that every convention has like a family day, or people bring their kids looking for kid stuff, and there isn't always a lot of kid stuff anymore. There isn't always like a lot of stuff that's like good for all ages that parents will enjoy, but that kids will also be drawn to. And so I definitely had that in mind as I was like talking through the characters with Nick and with the other cover artists and everything. So that was kind of the idea, and I hope that, like, I think this is a book that will do very well if I'm at a convention and I have these characters up on a banner behind me. I think people will be drawn in by the pop of color and kind of like what you said, the nostalgic feel of it all.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's I think that's the goal right now, is just to make it like a successful comic with a fan base that I can keep on coming back to this story and these characters, and until it doesn't make sense anymore. And if somewhere down the line an animation studio wants to talk about making it into a series, I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm not opposed, but I'm definitely focusing on the comic part of it right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's one of the beauties of creating right now, is that so many streaming services are looking for content that they're going to be like, hey, that's a great idea, and all of a sudden you're getting phone calls. So who knows? But I obviously I wish you the best with the comic and everything.
Thank you.
If you had the opportunity to kind of come up with a story, create something from a character that you know and love, you were showing kind of Iron Man. If you had the opportunity to write a story for one of your favorite characters, what character would it be, and kind of what direction do you think you'd take it differently than what's already been done?
I mean, that's a hard question. I like a good challenge. This is kind of like a controversial one now, actually, but I used to always like the Punisher. And I think that I would have some fun trying to write a story about that character. But now it's all like, that whole story is just so politicized, and everyone's like, there's a new Punisher and like all that stuff. Let me think if there's another one that's like a big mainstream one that I would really like to jump into. I mean, I feel like Batman is too easy of an answer, but I do love Batman.
Yeah. I mean, I love Spider-Man, obviously. I love Iron Man. But for me, a character that I feel like nobody has done any justice for is Green Lantern. Like, he's just something, like, there's something about the character that I mean, Ryan Reynolds mocks his own creation of the movie, all that stuff, but I feel like nobody's ever done it justice, and there's so many avenues it could go down,
I thought he's one of the first ones that popped to mind, but I kind of feel like the Jeff Johns run on the comic was pretty iconic, and like, kind of changing the entire trajectory of the whole DC universe in that story. So it's hard to be like, I mean, I kind of feel like the Flash is a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Where, I think Jeff like went over to the Flash for a little while and then started to do kind of the same thing, but then kind of left and did something else instead. And I think the Flash has always been kind of like, I love the Flash TV show, and I think like,
oh, it was amazing. Yeah,
it got to be like fun and like campy in a way that was like, that didn't take away from the whole story and kind of the hope and the the genuine kind of earnestness of it all. And I feel like in comics, I think there's always kind of an inclination to run away from that. Like, we want our heroes to be gritty, and the Flash, they're like, Barry Allen is just not a gritty person. He's full of hope and like life, and I feel like that's a hard thing to write sometimes. So I think that if I wanted a challenge, I think that's probably what I would go for.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I love the Flash. It's another great character, and again, I'll sit and watch the movie, but it wasn't the actor I wanted, and it just I couldn't buy into it as much. But that's just
I didn't mind him. I think there was a lot of other stuff wrong about it, but I don't know if it was.
There was, but a lot of it was the Michael Keaton, oh my gosh, it's like you're living for reactions, and unfortunately it just didn't do it justice, and I was kind of upset about it, because I was like, oh man, they're making a Flash movie, this is going to be great. No, it wasn't. It's just unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate. But yeah, honestly, I think what you're doing, what you represent, where you're coming from is so genuine. You got that likability factor as well. I was watching some of your interviews. You're very personable, and I think for people who are looking for creators out there that they can really resonate with, you're coming from a really good place. Like the fact that you're writing a story based on a conversation you had with your kid and just how he was dealing with his fears, and it's just a really great backstory to all of this, and I really do hope that it takes off. It's such a great concept, storyline, everything about it. The artwork is just a plus to that. I mean, it could be its own book without art. It's just got that feel to it, and I hope it does take off. Where I suppose what comes next for you? Like, are you touring? Are you doing any comic conventions, any of that kind of stuff?
So I'm waiting on that. I think like later this year, I'm still working with Blue Juice Comics on a few projects, and so I think as an editor and like on the publishing side, not as a creator. And I go to conventions with them sometimes. We skipped MegaCon this year. I think we're going to do one or two things on the second half of the year. Everybody has day jobs, so it's hard to kind of get together on a weekend that makes sense where we can all go to a city and do a thing.
Right.
When I do that, I will bring some of my own stuff. So I'll have some Cicada Samurai. I'll have the Grizzly Crew. Probably I publish another book called Reign of Dracula, which we're fulfilling now, the first campaign. I'm not the creator, but I'm the publisher for it. Rich Davis and Les Linden Gardner are the creative team on that. And I actually have a second Kickstarter going right now for another project that I'm the publisher on. And a couple people in my Instagram comments were already calling out like, "Hey, talk about us." So that's I'm in Scott Snyder's writing class, and so I publish a series called The Cloakroom. This is the first issue. It's an anthology series, and it is all written by and created by people who are in Scott's writing class. So it's all of his stories. And so the first issue, it's awesome. The first issue is probably going to be like 50 something pages long. There's 7 short stories in it, and there'll be a new issue of that every 3 months until Scott Snyder tells us to stop.
And so what is it based off of anything, or is it just stories you've come up with in class?
No, you can whatever. I'm happy to talk about it. This is the Grizzly Crew's got 5 days left. The Scott Snyder campaign goes until March. So I start with the Grizzly Crew, but I'm happy to let's talk about it. It's great. I love the cloak. So it's called The Cloakroom. It was called The Cloakroom because Scott's Substack newsletter, where it all kind of got started, is called Our Best Jacket. So as sort of a play on his title, the people who started this project called it the Tales from the Cloakroom. And this was 2 years ago. A group of people in the class got together and said, let's get 18 or 20 of these stories together and publish one trade paperback size comic. So they did that about 2 years ago. It's a Herculean task to get like a bunch of new comic writers to all get on one page. So I think they decided they weren't going to do it again. So a different group of people did a volume 2 a year later. And then they similarly were like, this was a lot. We're going to put it down. And so my partner is Veronica Howell, who's also in the class with me. And we came along and we were like, let's take it and turn it into a quarterly thing. So it doesn't feel like we're trying to get 20 stories together. We can be a constantly ongoing stream of work and a great outlet for all these like young, new, they're not all young. I'm 43 and I'm in the class, but we're all new to this. And so I think it's a great place to have your first story published. And so we kept the name The Cloakroom as an homage to Scott and an homage to where we came from. We've got 7 stories in there right now. The stories are all like really fun. We're exercising our editorial muscles. So we paired some writers up with artists that they had never worked with before, people we've worked with. My Grizzly Crew artist, Nick Justice, is doing a story in the book about a world where dinosaurs never went extinct. So they evolved into the sort of human beings. It takes place in Washington, D.C., which I just
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just fun stuff like that. And it's like these dinosaurs who jump through dimensions and kidnap humans and try and conquer the other worlds. And then there's also a very funny zombie story in it. And there's another one that's kind of a fairy tale about not taking a shortcut when you probably shouldn't be taking a shortcut. And there's like a really treacherous thing that happens in that story. Like the stories are all over the place in terms of.
I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah, and so that's kind of, we opened it up that way. You know, we
Awesome.
don't have a theme. It's just, if you're in Scott's group, if you're in the class with him, and you have an idea and you want to work on it, we'll work on it with you, and we'll work to publish it in an issue. So there'll be one every 3 months, and the first one's on Kickstarter.
And where does he do these classes? Like, how
he doesn't offer his Substack. So his Substack's called Our Best Jacket. I think his publishing company is called, his imprint is called Best Jacket Press, I think.
Wow.
And then the Substack is Our Best Jacket. And so through that, you know, if you're, I think it's a very low level, it's not expensive, but there's a low paying tier that you can join. And he does a monthly class. He brings on people like Donnie Cates and James Tynan and Kyle Higgins. And he had Will Dennis on, which he's like a legendary editor. And it's just Scott talking shop, talking about how to build an arc, how to build a story, how to take a story and turn it into a 5-issue thing or an ongoing thing, and sort of how to think about creating your own comics. And so we've all taken different things from the class, and yeah, it's great. It's really amazing. He's so like gracious. For my Cicada Samurai, he actually read the script and gave me notes on it. So, you know, and he does that for a lot of.
Are you kidding? Like, or what? Like, who has? That's like Spielberg coming in and going, yeah, you know, yeah, do this and do this. And
you're like, whatever you say, sir. Yeah.
Anything you say, I'm gonna change it right now. Yeah, for sure. But that's really, really cool. And you know, it's kind of again, it just is you, Jerry. To be fair, like it's humanizing for you, because a lot of people will look at your, I suppose, your dossier of what you've done, what you've accomplished, where you are, and just be like, yeah, it's going to be easy for him. But when you really dig into the work that's involved, you're just a really genuine dude. And just like hearing the story about how this was created, where it's all coming from, the fact that you get inspiration from your childhood, from your kids, and it's just really, really cool. So I just love that it's coming from such a good place, and then that you're going to classes just trying to just perfect your craft, which is just really, really cool. So
I just really enjoy it. I've always enjoyed reading books about the way people write and kind of the way they create their own creative thing, whatever it is. And so, you know, I originally joined the class I didn't have an idea. I wasn't like burning to write my own story just yet. And I just, hearing all these people talk about it, it started me thinking like, well, if I took something in the world that was scared me or was important to me, what would it be? And it's, you know, I have 3 kids. So right away, it's all about the kids. And then what parts of that would make interesting stories? And it's like, you know, Scott always talks about, especially when he does horror comics, he'll pick something he's afraid of, and he'll write a story that kind of delves into that fear, because then you're writing it from a place of feeling, like where you really know it, you know?
Yeah.
Expression, write what you know. I don't take that literally to be like, if you're an architect, write a story about architects, you know? It's more like, you know, you can write a story about a Cicada Samurai who protects a million 17-year-olds because you're afraid of your kid getting older and going out into a dangerous world. So your job is to protect them, and you don't know why that's your job, but it is.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't just put your wrench down and quit, you know. Like you have to do it. And so, what if you had to protect 1 million of them? And so, you can kind of take some fear in your life or some feeling, some strong emotion in your life, and turn it into a story.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's great.
It's great. It's where a lot of creative minds come from, you know. I have another podcast that's all about it's musicians and stuff, and it's the same concept. They're all writing from something they know and they've experienced, and it's very enriching to be able to create like that. So it's really, really cool. So Jerry, how do we keep in touch with you? Obviously, you got the thornycomics.com. Do you have social media and things that we can hook into?
I do. The 2 things I do most are Instagram and Facebook. I'm at Thorny Comics on Instagram. I'm also at Thorny Comics on Twitter, or X. And I think I'm the only Thorny Comics on Facebook. So if you look for Thorny Comics, I pop up. And then thornycomics.com will always point to whatever I'm working on. Now, when I don't have a campaign live, it'll probably point to the Facebook page.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's amazing. Well, Jerry, I know it's late, and everyone is tired and stuff, but I really wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be able to promote your work, to have a conversation with you, learn more about you, and of course meet the amazing Jerry Carita. Because, dude, you've got a following now. Like you're. I mean, I didn't talk about anything AMC tonight on purpose, but you have a huge, respectful community that follows you and are obviously rooting for you to be successful with your comic book venture. So I do wish the best for you, and for everyone that's watching this, definitely go check out thornycomics.com. The art, the stuff that you can buy there, it's amazing. It's not just good, it's amazing. And it's definitely, if you resonate with it, throw some money at it, get a comic, read the story, follow Jerry. There's more to come from this. So I really thank you for being on the show tonight. That has been another episode of The Unscripted Perspective, guys. It's a late Thursday evening for all of us, but I appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back again next week for another amazing episode. Until then, we will chat to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to leave us a rating or review on your favorite listening platform.
Be sure to keep in touch with us on Facebook and Instagram at
The Unscripted Perspective.
or you can visit us at
www.theunscriptedperspective.com.